Heritage Foundation's Kevin Roberts. In case you guys don't remember, we're going to get to the background of who he is. But I want to show you guys what he's been up to. He was speaking at an ALEC conference, and he had this to say.
We are renewing sovereignty and self-governance and faith in fellow man. Something that's close to my heart because my adopted hometown is Austin, Texas, a once great place that's been taken over by Marxists. When we have cities like Austin or Nashville or other capital cities whose local government is not representative of the will of the people, de-charter them and establish them as state municipal districts in the name of common sense. If you ask me, yeah, that'll make the news. We can provide air cover too. If that's a promise, if you do that. If you ask me, Kevin, what's the biggest threat to this common sense agenda that Trump and Vance have laid out and that we all agree with mostly? It's that. It's that there are government entities that illegitimately are imposing something other than the American dream on their people.
That's Kevin Roberts speaking like a Nazi, implementing Nazi-style rhetoric towards folks that are at this legislative convention. I want to repeat what he said in there in case you guys don't fully understand what it was. He says that these ALEC members, these are legislators, should de-charter capital cities that apparently don't do the will of the people. These capital cities where the leadership is voted in by the people, de-charter them and then make them state municipal districts under the control of these rogue MAGA fascist type of people. Completely undo local governments and local elections in the way that they represent their people, because we know that's where it always starts. So in trying to have this full fascist takeover, if there's any kind of democratically elected folks that are doing the will of the people, he calls it not the will of the people because he's a fascist. And you just claim just randomly, they're not doing the will of the people. They only voted these folks in. But for some reason, when Donald Trump narrowly wins an election, they call that a mandate. And they say he's doing the bidding of the entire country who wanted him to do this, as his approval rating dangles around 30%. Let me show you who Kevin Roberts was during the election and what it was that he was talking about that set off so many alarm bells.
We're in the process of taking this country back. No one in the audience should be despairing. No one should be discouraged. We ought to be really encouraged. That Supreme Court ruling yesterday on immunity is vital. And it's vital for a lot of reasons, but I would go to Federalist number 70 if people in the audience are looking for something to read over Independence Day weekend, in addition to rereading the Declaration of Independence. Read Hamilton's number 70, because there, along with some other essays, he talks about the importance of a vigorous executive. You know, former congressman, the importance of Congress doing its job, but we also know the importance of the executive being able to do his job. And can you imagine, Dave Bratt, any president, put politics off to the side, any president having to second guess, triple guess every decision they're making in their official capacity? You couldn't have the republic that you just described. But number three, let me speak about the radical left. You and I have both been parts of faculties and faculty senates and understand that the left has taken over our institutions. The reason that they are apoplectic right now, the reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily, is because our side is winning. And so I come full circle in this response and just want to encourage you with some substance that we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
That's who Kevin Roberts was. That was July of last year. And that's who he is now, as he's implementing or trying to, or at least telling these folks at this conference to implement more of these fascist types of policies. But as he pointed out there at the back end, I'm sure folks who paid attention always saw that part where he was talking about this American revolution that he's pushing for will be bloodless as long as the left allows it to be. He's a hostile terrorist who's running an organization that tells our legislators that kowtow to this president exactly what to do. They say lofty type of rhetoric and make it seem like it's the American dream, it's the golden era. the will of the people, things like that, that actually don't mean what it means. Here's more of what he said at that same conference.
Next year, Heritage will again be publishing, for the first time in over a decade, the Index of Cultural Flourishing. We have the Index of Economic Freedom, which is an international publication of economic freedom of different countries. Not surprisingly, the United States has been slipping. We have the Index of Military Strength, very important, especially right now, as Secretary Hegseth leads a great reform of the Pentagon. We have, as many of you know, indices on election integrity, on education freedom. In a lot of ways, as Jonathan and Lisa would say about their own similar products, those are the most helpful things to you. But the reason we're reprising the Index of Cultural Flourishing is to provide data for this question. Is everything we're doing in public policy at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, in the spirit of the 250th birthday of the greatest civil society ever known to man, focused on allowing families and individuals to flourish, not just economically, but also, very importantly, socially and culturally, and if they so choose, religiously? If we start thinking about all of our policy decisions through that lens, then I can tell you that America's 250th birthday next year will actually be the beginning of a second 250th period in which we continue to be the last best hope in the world.
He got the index of cultural flourishing that he's stressing in this particular point. But what the part of that is, as he asked the question, is everything we're doing in local level all the way up to the federal level in the spirit of America's 250th birthday? And in the spirit of the will of the people, which he thinks he can control. And they're going to focus on allowing families to flourish socially and culturally, not just financially. How will the people flourishing financially? Every time they talk about they're bringing in billions of dollars, which they're bringing into these oligarchs' pockets and nowhere else, because people's prices are still going up, their jobs are being lost, and inflation is rising. But so where's that financial flourishing happening? But they'll also claim that cultural flourishing has to do with beating down other folks that you consider inferior to you. That's what white supremacists think. That's why this terrorist white supremacist is up here saying this type of stuff, because that's how he believes culturally that they have this superior culture. They don't really have a culture. They just steal other people's culture and other people's lands and other people's lives. They do that. And then they act like there's this superiority complex that they need to heap on everyone else to just live beneath them. Someone that speaks and rages like this could have the same amount of power as that one fascist, again, that was at that Mehdi Hassan debate on Jubilee. Who cares, right? Except this guy runs the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is then talking to ALEC. If you guys don't know what ALEC is, I pointed out the acronym, but I'm going to show you more about what ALEC really is and reasons why what he says means more, because he's talking to these folks. Look at this. This is from a right-wing watch. They break all this down well. You can think of ALEC as a matchmaker between corporations and right-wing lawmakers willing to do their bidding. Or you can think of it as a form of conspicuous corruption, a paid-to-play arena in which corporate sponsors buy the opportunity to write business-friendly legislation and present it to legislators eager to endear themselves with potential funders. Legislators often return home after ALEC gatherings like this one and introduce copies of ALEC's model bills. Do you guys remember that time that Joe Manchin was busted, or at least one of the executives from Mobil, I believe it was Mobil Oil Company, was busted talking about, it was like this unseen video before where he talked about how they write policy and implement things that benefit their business and whatever their interests are, and hand it over to people like Joe Manchin, who will do it eagerly. It happens like this. And they come to these conventions, and people like this guy from the Heritage Foundation go and tell groups of ALEC, where they're supposed to be legislators, having this exchange of ideas, when in reality, it's them writing bills that will benefit them. And these guys blindly take the piece of paper and the money because they've just been bribed and go into their legislative sessions, all collectively together to do the same thing, which is advance these oligarchs. This is their history. They've been around for 50 years. ALEC has sometimes been aligned with religious right culture war priorities. A particularly offensive 1985 policy memo promoted egregious stereotypes to justify opposing the gay rights movement goal of passing anti-discrimination legislation. So, for example, the Alec memo falsely claimed that pedophilia was, quote, one of the more dominant practices within the homosexual world. Kind of weird how that's the policy and approach and mindset that these conservatives have been pushing since forever, despite the fact that we've seen in actual numbers the people who carry out types of sexual assault, specifically pedophilia, are generally straight white males. We've seen it, yo. You can say I'm biased, you can say I'm going after people that aren't like me, but straight up, that's what the stats say. Here's another push. Alec also played a part in promoting the manufactured panic about critical race theory that right-wing groups have used to sow distrust of public schools and encourage right-wing activists to take over local school boards, which they were doing. Alec's anti-CRT efforts fit within the group's history of promoting profit-making privatization of education while resisting accountability for private schools. So let me go ahead and tie the whole thing together here. Because, again, as I pointed out, the same guy, Kevin Roberts, was celebrating this guy named JD Vance getting that nod. JD Vance was speaking at some of these other summits at Heritage Foundation, and you won't be surprised as how much he loves them some Heritage Foundation.
And I want to thank especially Kevin Roberts and all of the Heritage Foundation for 50 years of incredible work on conservative policy.
He's thanking them, and he loves him some Kevin Roberts and Heritage Foundation's 50 years of doing all that stuff that I just described. And what that stuff has done is caused divisions, it's caused horrific policy, and it's caused the lack of people's rights being granted to them. And when that guy's put in place, they start doing things like eliminating your due process and not following the Constitution. You don't believe me?
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know.